Have you ever met a complete stranger and felt like you've known them forever? Have you dreamt of ancient temples or shadowy figures, never seen in real life, but somehow familiar? Is it possible that our minds are connected in ways deeper than science can fully explain? Today, we explore the mysterious and haunting theory of the collective unconscious, a hidden layer beneath our personal thoughts. A shared psychic foundation that unites all of humanity, across time, space, and even death. Welcome to the mind of Carl Jung, and perhaps your own. Carl Jung believed that the human mind had layers. At the surface lies the conscious, your waking thoughts, plans, identity. Beneath it, the personal unconscious, forgotten memories, hidden desires. But deeper still, exists something ancient. Not personal, not individual, but universal. The collective unconscious is a reservoir of inherited memories, instincts, and symbols. It's not formed by experience, it's already there at birth. Jung believed it held the psychological blueprint for what it means to be human. Jung wasn't just a scientist. He was a dreamer, a mystic. While Freud saw the mind as a machine of repressed sexuality, Jung saw the mind as a living myth. He studied ancient cultures, religions, tribal rituals. He noticed strange patterns. People in different continents dreamed the same symbols, created the same gods, faced the same psychological battles. It couldn't be coincidence. He proposed that these patterns came from a shared mental structure, a psychological skeleton embedded in all of us, just like we all share a physical skeleton. So what exactly is stored in the collective unconscious? Jung called them archetypes. Archetypes are universal images and roles, not learned, but born into us. The hero who must face a great evil. The shadow, representing all we fear and reject. The great mother, nurturing and terrifying. The wise old man, the trickster, the child, the anima animus. They live in our myths, religions, and personal dreams. You might never study mythology, but you instinctively recognize the hero's journey. You feel drawn to symbols, stories, and faces that echo these archetypes, without knowing why. Because they are yours, and they are everyone's. Why do cultures across the globe, separated by oceans and centuries, tell similar stories? The Egyptian sun god Ra, the Norse Odin, the Aztec Quetzalcoatl, all-powerful, sky-dwelling beings who die and are reborn. The flood myth appears in the Bible, in Mesopotamia, in Hindu texts. The serpent, wise, dangerous, shows up everywhere. The underworld, the divine tree, the hero guided by spirits. Jung believed these weren't cultural borrowings. They were expressions of the collective unconscious, symbols bubbling up from a shared human mind. Dreams are personal myths. Myths are collective dreams. Archetypes didn't vanish with ancient religion. They just changed masks. In Star Wars, Luke Skywalker is the hero guided by Obi-Wan, the wise old man. Vader is the shadow, the father we fear becoming. The Force? A modern echo of spiritual balance. Even memes, oddly, reflect the collective mind. Why do certain images, the Duma, the NPC, the Chad, resonate globally? Because they express collective psychological truths. We laugh, but it's our unconscious speaking in symbols again. Now, can this mystical idea be explained scientifically? Some researchers explore epigenetic memory, inherited responses passed through DNA. Others study neural pattern recognition, how our brains naturally seek archetypes for survival. Even AI, when trained on enough human data, begins generating archetypal symbols. Coincidence? Or a glimpse into a coded language beneath our thoughts? The science isn't conclusive, but it hints that Jung's idea might not be pure mysticism. Of course, many reject the theory of the collective unconscious. Critics say Jung offered no hard proof, that archetypes are too vague, too open to interpretation. Some call it spiritual fantasy in scientific disguise. But even skeptics admit, Jung's ideas shaped art, therapy, literature, cinema, and how we think about being human. Truth doesn't always come in numbers. Sometimes, it comes in symbols. For mystics and seekers, the collective unconscious is more than psychology. It's the soul of humanity, a place where spirits, ancestors, gods, and dreams live. Some say the Akashic Records, or universal consciousness, are ancient versions of Jung's idea. In altered states, meditation, psychedelics, near death, people often report visions, not just of their life, but of all life. Are they tapping into the collective? The shadow begins to form early in life. As children, we learn that certain behaviors get us love and approval, while others get us punished or rejected. So we adapt. We wear a social mask. We push the unacceptable parts down, out of sight, into the unconscious. But just because we bury them doesn't mean they go away. They fester. They find ways to leak out, through projections, emotional outbursts, addictions, irrational fears. And if we ignore them long enough, they begin to control us from the shadows. The shadow doesn't always announce itself. Often, it appears when we least expect it, when we are under stress, in conflict, or confronted with something that threatens our self-image. One of the most common ways the shadow reveals itself is through projection. When we see something in someone else that triggers us, when we say, "I can't stand how selfish that person is," or "he's so arrogant, I hate it," we may actually be seeing a part of ourselves we've disowned. Jung said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves." Think about that. Every person you dislike, every trait you condemn in others, may be pointing directly at something you carry but refuse to admit. Another way the shadow emerges is through impulsive behavior, moments when we snap or act out of character. A calm, collected person suddenly explodes in rage. A kind person lashes out cruelly. These are moments when the mask slips, and the shadow takes control. It can also appear in dreams, often in the form of dark figures, threatening strangers, or distorted versions of ourselves. Jung believed these dream characters were symbolic messengers, inviting us to confront the parts of ourselves we fear the most. Most people go their whole lives without confronting their shadow. They live in denial, convinced that they're good and that evil exists only out there, in others, in enemies, in society. But Jung warned that ignoring the shadow doesn't make it disappear. In fact, it makes it stronger. What we repress becomes unconscious, and what is unconscious becomes autonomous. It gains power, acting beneath the surface, influencing our thoughts, our relationships, our decisions. Unchecked, the shadow can lead to self-sabotage, destructive behavior, broken relationships, depression, even violence. At the societal level, entire groups or nations can fall into collective shadow, projecting their darkest impulses onto outsiders, scapegoats, or enemies. History is full of examples where refusal to confront inner darkness has led to real-world horror. Jung believed that any attempt to become pure, to live without acknowledging the shadow, was an illusion, and a dangerous one. We can't cut the darkness out of ourselves. We can only integrate it. So if we can't destroy the shadow, what can we do? Jung's answer was simple, but not easy. We must confront it. We must bring the shadow into consciousness, face it honestly, and integrate it into our sense of self. This process is known as shadow work. So, are we all sharing the same mind? Maybe not literally, but beneath language, culture, and memory, we seem to share a blueprint, a map of symbols, a collective inheritance, a psychological DNA. And if that's true, then the stranger you passed in the street today might carry the same dream as you. Maybe we were never really alone in our minds. Not entirely. You've just heard Jung's idea of the collective unconscious, this invisible layer beneath our thoughts, shared across humanity. It's a haunting theory, a beautiful one. But what do I think? I don't claim to have the final answer, but I'll tell you how I see it. I think there's something very human about wanting to feel connected, to each other, to something bigger than ourselves. And maybe that's what Jung was reaching for. Not a scientific law, but a deeper kind of truth. A psychological mirror of our shared existence. When I look around the world, the stories we tell, the dreams we have, the struggles we all face, I don't see billions of isolated minds. I see patterns, repeating, echoing, the same fears, the same longings. In a way, we are all acting out some version of the same inner story. I've had dreams I can't explain, symbols I've never studied, but somehow felt. And I've met people, complete strangers, who seem to carry pieces of something I was also looking for. Is that the collective unconscious? I don't know. Maybe it's just how empathy works. Or maybe it's proof that beneath everything, we are connected, not by blood or belief, but by something older. Something deeper. Call it psyche. Call it soul. Call it the unconscious. It doesn't matter. What matters is, we're not as separate as we think. Jung said that symbols are how the unconscious speaks. So maybe the world is always trying to talk to us, in dreams, in chance encounters, in the stories that move us without reason. When we feel seen by art, when a myth from 2,000 years ago still feels like us. Maybe that's not just history. Maybe that's memory. Not personal memory, but human memory. So I try to pay attention to symbols, to dreams, to what resonates, even if I don't fully understand why. Because sometimes the mind knows something the brain doesn't. And I think that's what Jung wanted us to realize. So, do I believe in the collective unconscious? Not like a religion, not like a law, but I feel it. And I think you do too. Not because Carl Jung said it, but because, if you listen closely to your own mind, you'll find ancient echoes there. Whispers that don't belong to just you, but to all of us.